I couldn't believe what I was watching today. The government now in freefall, chaos, no leadership, ministers pushing smears, saying any crazy thing to deflect from more bad economic news. But I think what should really be terrifying Labor MPs is that they are now having to defend a Prime Minister who's lost it. It's so bad that Anthony Albanese went missing today, I assume to avoid being questioned over what's now clearly a lie or wild pro-China spin. This completely false claim that he made last Friday that, no worries, China had warned us in advance that its 3 warships off New South Wales would hold a live fire exercise that day, right under a busy flight path, forcing 49 planes to take evasive action.
China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities.
Now that we now know was completely false. The head of our armed forces confirmed that in a Senate hearing yesterday, China gave no warning at all. And the first that our Navy heard about this live fire business was from a Virgin pilot 40 minutes after it actually started.
Is it the case that Defence was only notified via Virgin and Air Services Australia 28 minutes after the firing window commenced?
Yes.
Now, it beggars belief that the Prime Minister could have said something so false. And maybe that is why he didn't front the mainstream media today. I think he did one soft radio interview, which meant that other senior ministers had to step in and spin for him, like poor Defence Minister Richard Marles, who had to deny the bleeding obvious.
Did the PM mislead the Australian public by saying we received notification of the Chinese warships when there was no heads up given prior to those live fire exercises?
Well, we need to be careful here. I mean, the answer to your question is no. The Prime Minister did nothing of the kind. When the Prime Minister made clear that there was a notification from the Chinese, but in the same breath made clear that that notification was inadequate.
Jeez. Foreign Minister Penny Wong also had to cover up for Albanese, who, let me remind you, is supposed to be leading Labor into an election any day now.
So we were provided advance notice?
Both statements are correct.
It is not the same thing to say we received notice and there was no advance notice provided, which is what you have said, compared to what the Prime Minister has said.
So it is correct that China gave notice. We have issues with the timeframe around that and the channel, and we have expressed that to them.
How did they give notice if we only learned of the exercises after they had commenced?
Wong never answered that. All of which let the opposition leader today claim that the Prime Minister had misled Australians.
Well, and that he's misled the Australian people. This is a very serious claim to be made against a Prime Minister, but he is at odds with the sworn testimony of the Chief of the Defence Force.
Now, adding to the government's misery today was another sign that inflation is not beaten, is still hurting Australians. The Health Minister had to approve a claim by private health insurers to lift premiums by an average of 3.7%, which they blamed on inflation under this government.
This was an extremely tough decision for the health insurance funds and their federal regulators to make. What the increase is being driven by is inflation. Health sector inflation is running at 4%, which is actually higher than the increase. And there was an 8% increase in payments to hospitals last year by the health insurance funds. So this is as low as we can go and still be able to pay our hospitals properly.
Now, if you want to know how all this bill shock is hurting people, you just needed to see a clinic in Liverpool today, Independent MP Di Lee's annual Bring Your Bill Day, where people struggling to keep up payments get expert help.
Today is, the opportunity to come around and talk to someone. Maybe they can help with advice where to go to.
Everything is out of cost, so it's very hard to rent food for study things.
I'm in trouble, financial trouble. So I hope that I got some help I cross my finger.
Who's standing up for us? So I believe Miss Lee is doing the right thing, and I wish her to keep fighting for the voiceless and the helpless.
So, what could the government say to all this? Well, one, that the premiums went up even more when Peter Dutton was Health Minister more than 11 years ago. Treasurer Jim Chalmers went even crazier, made an even wilder claim to deflect attention from the health insurance premiums. Get this, he actually claimed that this evil Peter Dutton would slash health spending to pay for his promised nuclear reactors, even though Dutton last weekend promised to spend an extra $9 billion on free doctors' visits, more than even Labor. It really was that stupid.
He will cut Medicare to pay for nuclear reactors. There is no way for him to find the $600 billion he needs for his nuclear reactors without coming after Medicare.
Now, Chalmers was either treating us like fools or he is one himself, or maybe just this panicking. He really thinks that the Liberals' promise of 7 nuclear reactors are going to cost us $600 billion. What is that? About $86 billion per reactor, $86 billion per reactor. Now you compare. The coalition this year actually checked with the South Korean company that's going around the world building these things, nuclear reactors, and wants to build some here. That company had just finished building 4 reactors for the UAE. Cost, not $86 billion each, but just 8. Now it's building 2 more reactors for the Czech Republic. And the cost there, again, it's not $86 billion each, but 13 billion. What are the Albanese government's renewable energy schemes costing us, by the way? It's green hydrogen mirages that are falling over all over the shop. And meanwhile, you know, we're left with not enough power. Genius move, guys. So, as Rome burned, what's the Prime Minister actually been fiddling with? And now we know. He and his staff have been busy planting dirt on Dutton in the media. Like this story that Dutton bought bank shares 16 years ago, the day before the Rudd Labor government bailed out the banks. And last night, Labor MP Andrew Charlton actually admitted Albanese's fingers, that those of him and his staff, were all over that dirt file.
I learnt it when I saw the information that had come out, in relation to his register of interests.
You mean this week?
No, before this week, I was made aware of it.
By whom?
By the Prime Minister's office, who had been looking at it.
Yet Albanese yesterday pretended to be above all this grubbiness. His hands were clean.
I make no comment about Peter Dutton's matters. That's a matter for him.
So that's what your Prime Minister is doing. As China fires its guns, the economy tanks, Australians beg for help with their bills. Don't bother him, he's actually busy digging for dirt. Look, I don't know how Labor can afford to have Albanese lead them into another election when he's in this shape. And I bet today is a day when Labor MPs must have been looking and thinking, uh-oh.